So there's three things in Psalm 139 I'm going to pull out for us. There's actually a whole bunch of stuff you could talk about here, but just three things I felt like God was putting on my heart to talk about today. And the first one is that God is with us. But before we get there, I just want to read through the whole thing, since I'll just be picking out certain verses to kind of show you what I mean by God being with us and the other points. So I'm just going to read the whole psalm and look for how God is with us in these verses. O Lord, you have searched me and known me. You know when I sit down and when I rise up. You discern my thoughts from afar. You search out my path and my lying down, and you are acquainted with all my ways. Even before a word is on my tongue, behold, O Lord, you know it altogether. You hem me in behind and before, and you lay your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. It is high. I cannot attain it. Where shall I go from your spirit? Or where shall I flee from your presence? If I ascend to heaven, you are there. If I make my bed in Sheol, hell, you are there. If I take the wings of the morning and dwell in the uttermost parts of the sea, even there your hand will lead me. Your right hand shall hold me. If I say, surely the darkness shall cover me, and the light about me be night, even the darkness is not dark to you. The night is bright as the day, for darkness is as light with you. Okay, so that's the first half of this psalm. We're actually going to stop there. I lied. We're going to just read the first 12 verses and see how God is with us in this text. I mean, he's really here throughout the whole thing, looking through verses 1 through 6. He knows everything about me. He knows when I sit down, when I rise. It's like he's creepy, but it's God, so it's okay. He's not creepy. He just knows everything about me because he's with me. And I think it's interesting. This is just, I didn't read this or anything. I kind of just realized it. I feel like to really know something like this much about someone, you have to really care about them. That's not even like, I don't know, that's just like a side note, but God really cares about it if he's spending that much time to know about us. He has to care. If he's going to spend enough time to know what I'm thinking about, to focus on that, to know what I'm going to say, and he's just behind and before. In verse 5, he's laying his hand upon us. David, he feels safe. He feels safe because God is all around him. Let me read verses 7 through 10 again. I really like these verses. Just God is with us here. Where shall I go from your spirit? Or where shall I flee from your presence? If I ascend to heaven, you are there. If I make my bed in Sheol, you are there. If I take the wings of the morning and dwell in the uttermost parts of the sea, even there your hand shall lead me, and your right hand shall hold me. This reminded me of, there's lots of Bible stories or whatnot about this, but like Jonah, he tried to get away from God's presence. God said, go to the Ninevites. Go tell them about who I am. And Jonah said, nope, I'm not doing that. I'm going as far away as I can. I was like, that's kind of like if God, wanted somebody in Ukraine to go to Russia right now. It's like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm going to South America as far as I can go. That's kind of what Jonah did. But God was still there, regardless of how far he ran. It didn't matter. God was still there when Jonah tried to run. Or like Adam and Eve, first story in the Bible, other than creation. They tried to hide from God because they realized they had sinned. They knew they were naked. They said, well, we're going to hide from God. And God said, where you guys at? He said he was playing hide and seek, but it was serious. And he found them, and he had never left them. He was with them. Jonah, Adam and Eve, me, us. We do the same thing sometimes, I think. We try to hide from God, but we can't get away from him. He's still here, whether or not we allow him to be, if you will. Whether or not we realize it. He's still here. And we have to realize that is actually not such a bad thing. The way I'm saying that, it makes it sound like, oh, God's like, rules. You have to be here, and I'm going to make you do things. But this is actually good that God's with us. God's not some like vindictive God where he says, do all these things. No, it's more like God is here with us because he wants the best for us. And so it's more like when you realize that God's with us, you realize that that's everything we need. Like, he's our shepherd, remember? He's going before us and behind us. God with us is actually one of the names for Jesus, Emmanuel. We talk about it at Christmas, right? But we don't hear about it much throughout the rest of the seasons. But God with us is Jesus. He's with us no matter where we're at in life. We can't get away from God, and that's actually the biggest blessing we have in this world. Verses 11 and 12, I think, give us another picture of how God being with us is actually a light in our lives. It says, if I say, surely the darkness shall cover me, and the light about me be night, even the darkness is not dark to you. The night is bright as the day. Darkness is as light with you. Wow. That's really weird. Darkness is dark, right? Duh. But it's not just darkness is light. I mean, darkness is dark, but like with God, what is bad can become good, is where I'm going with that. Like, the worst things that have happened to you in your life can be the best things when you tell people about what God has done for you. The worst dark places in your life, when you felt depressed, when you felt alone, when you felt like nobody cared, or you felt like, who knows? I don't know. Maybe you're going to lose your job, or you already lost your job and you don't know if you're going to be able to maintain. Darkness can become light when God can change those. God changes those things, because it doesn't. God it's like a perspective almost. God's with us, and so even the bad things become good things when God is part of our lives. So let him be that. When we're lost and confused about social media and all the stuff that stresses us out because we're like, nobody has a brain anymore. Like, that doesn't mean it has to stay that. It doesn't have to be dark all the time, because God is with us, and so we can be reminded that there is truth and there is reality, and that God is actually the only light that can get us through this life. So looking at that, we just realize that God is with us, and that that's not bad. That's good. God is what we need in our lives. He is with us. He turns darkness into light. God is with us. The second thing I want to notice, besides God being with us, is I'll just read the next 12 verses, and then I'll look at 19 through 22, because those are tricky verses. Those are verses that are not comfortable verses. So let me read 13 through 24, and we'll get there. For you formed my inward parts. You knitted me together in my mother's womb. I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works. My soul knows it very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was being made in secret, intricately woven in the depths of the earth. Your eyes saw my unformed substance. In your book were written, every one of them, the days that were formed for me, when as yet there was none of them. How precious to me are your thoughts, O God! How vast is the sum of them! If I could count them, they are more than the sand. I awake, and I am still with you. Like if he fell asleep counting them. He's awake. He awakes, and he's still with God. Oh, that you would slay the wicked, O God! O men of blood, depart from me. They speak against you with malicious intent. Your enemies take your name in vain. Do I not hate those who hate you, O Lord? And do I not loathe those who rise up against you? I hate them with complete hatred. I count them my enemies. Search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me and know my thoughts. And see if there be any grievous way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. David really, really likes God. David is so impressed with God. He's praising him. He's thanking him. He says in verse 6, such knowledge is too wonderful for me. It is high. I cannot attain it. That's like Cinderella. You know, she gets to the ball, right? God's knowledge is too high for him. He cannot attain it. It's like when Cinderella gets to the ball and she's like, I don't belong here. She knew that she didn't belong with this prince because this prince is like, he's everything and she's nothing. She's a little girl and she's just got one special night. And she knew she didn't belong. And that's what David feels here. He says, I cannot deserve this. I cannot attain this. I don't know, big word. I can never be what you've made me, Lord. And then he praises him in verse 14. He says, wonderful are your works. My soul knows it very well. He's praising God throughout this song. He says, God, you're everything. You made me, and that's incredible. It's not, being like, oh, you made me special, I'm special. It's like, God, you are special because you made me. It's incredible. This is a strong love that David has, which explains verses 19 through 22. He says, oh, that you would slay the wicked, O God. O men of blood, depart from me. They speak against you with malicious intent. Your enemies take your name in vain. Do I not hate those who hate you, O Lord? And do I not loathe those who rise up against you? I hate them with complete hatred. I count them as my enemies. I was reading that, and the reason I wanted to just mention it is because I kind of struggle with that. Like, why should David be hating these people? Why aren't we supposed to love our enemies? Isn't that what Jesus said? Like, pray for those who persecute you. Love your enemies. But I think David says this because he loves God so much. It's like when Jesus said, you can leave father and mother and sister and brother. You should leave them on account of me. Not that we're actually supposed to just abandon our family, but that we're supposed to go to God first. We're supposed to love him the most. So that in comparison, everybody else is enemies, or we have to leave our family. That's what David is talking about here, it seems to me. He's saying, God, I want you to be glorified. So much so that I wish these folks, I wish that they were not here, Lord, because they don't honor you. This is really just looking to eternity when everything will be made just. He's not saying, God, please kill all these people. God is a merciful God. But he's saying, in the end, God, I want you to be honored. I want you to be glorified as you will be. I want you to be enthroned and lifted up. And he says, these people aren't doing that. And that's why David is so upset here. Because he's like, God, you're not being honored like you deserve. And that's what David's talking about here. He's not saying, God, please strike them dead. He's saying, God, I want you to be honored. And I'm sad you're not. So we see in those first verses that God is with us. Here, we see such a strong love that anything that's not honoring God just is, David hates it in comparison. And the third thing we're going to see is that in response to God being with us, in response to this love that he had for him, we see that we need to let God lead us. I'm just going to pick out a few verses here, which are really key. Let him lead you. Look at verse 5, 139:5. It says, you hem me in, behind and before, and lay your hand upon me. This is God being with us language, but it's also God leading us language. Hemming, it's like guiding. It's like a sheepdog, like getting the sheep. I'm a dumb sheep, right? But he's going to get me in the right direction. He's hemming me in behind, before and behind. And from the side, from the other side. No matter how far we try to go, he's still going to be hemming us in from each side, and he's going to be guiding us with his hand. And in verse 10, it's similar language. Your hand shall lead me. Your right hand shall hold me. It's like a little kid, It's like, God, will you guide me through this, the store of life, on a walk, God, will you guide me through this? Will you lead me? Because I don't know where I'm going without God. Verse 16, another verse talking about how God leads us. Your eyes saw my unformed substance. In your book were written, every one of them, the days that were formed for me, when as yet there was none of them. This is a verse, another verse of hope in God's leading us, because because he already knows what's going to happen. When we follow him, he already has a plan for us. All we have to do is get on the train. All we have to do is get on board with what God has already planned for us. Before I was even crying in the hospital room, God said, I know what you're going to do. I have plans for you. And here you go. Just follow what I have for you. God said, here you go. I know the days that are for you. I know what you're going to do. And that leads us to verse 24 and 23. This is really the point of the entire psalm. Even though we've seen God is with us, we've seen how such a deep love looks like hatred of others. And here we see letting him lead us. Here in 23 and 24, we see how it all comes together. He says, search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me and know my thoughts, and see if there be any grievous way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. That's what it is. Lead me in the way everlasting. The reason David has been talking this whole time about God being with him, the reason David has been talking this whole time about how much he loves God and how that even comes off as hating others, is because he wants God to look into his heart and see a pure heart. He wants God to change him. He says, try me and know my thoughts. Search me and know my heart. The psalm begins with, you have searched me and known my heart. And it ends in the same way, asking God to continue to search and know his heart. Those things, those bookends, the first and the last, that means that's kind of what the psalm is about. Just that's like a whole summary is, you try me and know my heart, Lord. Search me. I want to do the right thing. I want to let you lead me. And he's asking God to help him. Look in that last verse. Lead me in the way everlasting. This is giving up control. That's what it is. Give up control and let Jesus take over. It's actually, I was asking Macy how to illustrate this because she's very helpful. And she said, you should just use that classic Carrie Underwood song about Jesus taking the wheel. And then Kyle steals it from me. And I'm like, how am I supposed to? Whatever. Anyway, so Jesus take the wheel is really what we're talking about here. It says, lead me in the way everlasting. Jesus, I'm giving up. I'm putting my hands up. I need you to take care of this for me. I can't do it on my own. Again, I was trying to think of how that could look like. I mean, in our lives, what does it look like to give God control? To let him lead you in the way everlasting? And I think it looks like Elizabeth Elliot, about 70 years ago, in the 50s, I believe. Her husband, Jim Elliot, went to Ecuador with some other missionaries. And they were actually killed by the tribes they went to. They just said, nope, we're not even going to talk to you, and they killed him. Elizabeth Elliot, Jim's wife, wasn't with him. But she went back, after they had killed her husband, she went back in faith, and God led her back to those people in Ecuador. And God used that. That tribe said, what? We killed your husband. Why are you here? You're weird. We want to know why you're here. This is crazy. And God used that. And those people believed in Jesus because of her faithfulness, because Elizabeth Elliot listened, because she let God lead her in the path everlasting, because she was faithful. She said, search me and know my heart. Try me and know my thoughts. Lead me in the path everlasting. And God led her right back to those people who had killed her husband. And he used it. God used it. And that's how people came to know Jesus, because she was faithful. So I guess I should just close in prayer, because I want to pray that over us today, that we would search, that he would search our hearts, know our thoughts, and lead us in the way everlasting. So I just want to pray those words over you guys. Dear Lord, search us, know our thoughts, know our hearts. See if there's any wrong way in us, and lead us in your way everlasting.